welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Look at this crowd. Oh my gosh.
The most widely attended session of all of VMware Explorer this year. Welcome everyone. And welcome to our session today on VCF first day. Our goal here today primarily is to talk about how to prepare yourself to be self-sufficient in troubleshooting your VMware Cloud environment. A few words about myself while you read this fascinating slide. My name is Brian Watrous. I am a member of the VCF division of VMware by Broadcom. I am a technical learning engineer specializing in technologies and products in the ARIA suite. In a few short months, I'll be beginning my 20th year at VMware.
20 years!
20 years. But enough about me. There we go. It is my pleasure and my privilege and your good fortune that I'm joined here today on stage by Tim Burkhardt, or perhaps you know him by his alter ego, V. Gandalf, right here on the stage with me. I'm just going to walk off.
Don't you dare, don't you dare.
So, Tim has been teaching IT professionals like you about operating systems, security, and networking for decades. So we're all fortunate to have him here to share his knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Brian. I am humbled by that because the brains, he calls himself Brian because that's what his parents named him. Now, if you spell Brian, B-R-I-A-N, you don't actually get him because he's the brain, B-R-A-I-N. And I am privileged to be working with you.
Well, thanks. All right, so my colleague and I are going to be talking about VCF, and I'd like to start with just a quick flashback. I try to minimize the number of instructor stories I tell, but this one is relevant. Flashback, 20 years ago. It's Brian's first day at work as a VMware employee. My boss pulls me aside and says, Brian, here's what you're going to be teaching. He tells me I'm going to be teaching a piece of software called Virtual Center. You guys call that vCenter nowadays. And he told me I was going to be teaching something called ESX, which you guys know is the predecessor to today's modern ESXi hypervisor. I thought I had my work cut out for me, and I did try hard. I know you did too. We were talking about how hard it was to prepare. They actually gave us several months to prep to teach that class, which was pretty darn generous, but it still was a bit of a stretch because there's a lot going on with the vCenter and ESXi. But we did it. Flash forward to today. You guys have VCF. That means you've got vCenter and ESXi, so that's about the level we were at.
That's a starting point. That's a good starting point.
But you also have SDDC Manager, and you've got vSAN for your storage virtualization, and you've got NSX for your network virtualization, and you've got that whole suite of products called ARIA. So I stand before you. We were just doing our little love fest here. Let me shower the love upon you guys and gals for tackling what is admittedly a fairly extensive stack. So monitoring and troubleshooting can be a bit of a challenge. So our goal here today is, again, to prepare you to be self-sufficient. So we'll talk about strategies for that. Shameless plug for tomorrow. Tim and I will be right here again at 2:30 to deliver another important piece of the story, which is how to simplify operations in your VMware Cloud environment. The title there says VCF operations, which might make you think they're talking about that old vRise operation stuff. We are talking about the product, but this is more than that. It's the overall operations of all the technologies in VCF.
I'm playing Vanna White, just
Thank you,
showing the number and turning the page.
All right, so we're going to get started here. In today's session, we are going to be talking about how to use the tools built into VCF to identify failed components. We're going to be talking about logging, and we're going to be talking about how to perform maintenance and upgrades in your environment. Plus, as an added bonus for you and all the other thousands of people out there, there is a fourth bullet item that you can't see here because it's in invisible ink. The fourth bullet item is, that's different. We're going to be talking about lifecycle management in a VCF environment. Now, I am going to hand it off to Tim. He's actually going to be doing the heavy lifting today's session. I'll be doing more of it tomorrow, but Tim,
Lifecycle Manager is right in there with managing your upgrades and managing all that stuff. Thank you all for being here. Why aren't you drinking? Okay, there's one? One of you? Come on, free booze. What? Oh, there you go. You're already done. You probably, okay. Thank you for taking time out of the party to sit with us. We really do appreciate it. And we all know we need first aid. We know we've got to take care of our VCF environment. I have to ask, show of hands, how many of you are VCF customers? Little less than half, right about half. Okay, very good. So you all probably know all this already. I'm just gonna, pile on a little bit. Those of you that aren't, why not? What's taking you so long? You don't have to answer that. Okay, please come to the party. Oh, this is the party. We got thousands of people. This is the party. We got 1,000 people here, Brian. All right. In VCF, as Brian said, you got a lot of stuff. You have a lot of appliances that you're working with. He mentioned SDDC Manager. You may have heard of vCenter. Possibly you've heard of NSX managers. You may have heard of vSAN within vCenter. You may have heard of the ARIA suite. Now, you get VCF, you got all those appliances. How are you going to troubleshoot? I almost slipped. How are you going to troubleshoot that stuff? That's the idea. How do you know what broke? If hardware breaks, how do you know which piece? How do you know what's going on? We have a command line tool you can use on the SDDC Manager that tracks all that. So before you get on a phone and start calling global services saying, help me, you can get a whole lot of information and possibly solve the problem while you're waiting for them to get back to you. It's possible that would happen. Now, we've all dealt with command line tools before. Anybody ever dealt with a command line tool? Do you love the output that a command line tool gives you? Lines and lines of text. Don't lie to me. He's giving me 2 thumbs up.
Type less.
Yeah, less, more, what? Okay, we've created this CLI tool to be more human readable and actually give us a chance to possibly find information without having to, go through a whole structure of grep. I need to grep. I need to find. Let's do that. This tool will let us gather log files. I know everybody sitting here or standing back there loves reading log files. They're Mike's favorite. His favorite thing to do is read log files. You know what I've done with log files primarily? Given them to support to read them. They're really good at reading that crap. They read that stuff like I'm reading Tom Clancy. They're reading it like I'm reading novels. They're reading log files. And then they go, that's the problem. I have a hard time finding those problems. They don't. We can also pull it out, throw it in JSON so we can read it later on down the road. So those are things. It's called the SOS. There. I thought it was on there. It's called SOS. And the SOS utility, does this look like your typical command line output? It does not, Constantine. It does not look. That's the output the SOS utility brings. Okay, now the SOS utility is on the SDDC Manager appliance. And the SDDC Manager's database stores all that. It's got all this information in the SDDC Manager database. So if you want to check a health check, this command is not showing you the whole page, right? He's just doing a health check, and he goes through all the components, and he color codes and stuff. Come on, command line output with color coded output, please. I don't know about you, but that's not something I've seen a lot of. Okay? But color coded output, green is good, yellow is iffy, orange is bad, red is Okay, just in case you didn't know the color code, I'd give you that. All these switches are a sample. I mean, you can do help, switch help, and tac help, and get the output in all the different switches. But you've got checking for connectivity, checking for services, checking for network components like NTP or DNS. Certificates. Does anybody deal with certificates and find that to be an easy thing to do? I'm waiting to get somebody to say, oh yeah, certificates are so easy. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then I'd have to call you out as being a liar, because I'm sure that's not the case, right? So, password health, SDC Manager can actually help you rotate your passwords and take care of your passwords. Would that be a benefit? Has anybody ever had to recover an NSX Manager's password? Anybody ever had to recover an expired EdgeNode password or vCenter password? Ooh, it's messy. Let us help you. Okay? First aid. Get inventory info. What did I say about the SCC Manager? It's a database. What's a database? All the inventory. Okay? So that's one of the switches. Just allow it to pull out. These two are bold for a reason. The main reason, look at the output that you get here. Health check. It gives you this, 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 it gives you this. It's possibly too much. By default, it gives your management domain health check. Honestly, you're probably wanting to know what your VI workload domain, that's where the fail, that's your moneymaker, that's your bread and butter, that's what you need to know about. You can do a health check on the VI workload domain by identifying it with the domain name switch. And then you could check connectivity on that workload domain. You can check NTP health on that workload domain. You can check the full health check on the workload domain. So that focus, that's probably where you need to be more often than the management domain. Management domain is just managing. All those appliances that we talked about earlier, that's what's in the management domain. That's not where your money makers are. That's not where your bread and butter is. That's not where your applications are running. I mean, unless you're small and using a converged network, but boom, you need to identify the domain name to get all this output. Since we all love working with logs so much, that was a joke. You can laugh now. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to laugh. All right, when you run the contents of a log file, obviously scsport SOS command to get logs, you will get, just running SCCSOS, you get the location and the collection of logs. So you're all going to have lots of reading to do the next day. But I wanted to point one thing out. Well, probably more than one thing. You've got a health report log, a health results JSON file that outputs what is the log content. You've got the SDDC 202309211546 TGUGS tarballed up set of logs. This is again by default your management domain. But when global support says finally calls you back, so what's the problem? Well, I have this issue. I need your logs. No problem. I'll send you up the tarball, and you can read them and tell me what's wrong. Now, problem, of course, being all that is your management domain. How do I get the content for the money makers? who's going to answer this question for me? See, I'm still a trainer. Who's going to answer this question? How do I point to my VI workload domain to get the logs for that VI workload domain? The domain name switch. You did it. I feel like I've done something here. All right, then the rest of these are all directories. And you can see the PSC, the NSX, the vCenter, the ESX, they all collected into their own directory. So you really have a lot of log information there. And you'll see it in the temp folder and you get all that output. But with a domain name switch, you can get these logs for the particular VI workload domain. Brian and I were kind of asked if we'd come and do this. And we volunteered ourselves right into it, and we came. And the guys that wrote the abstract sent me this list. And I went, ew, how am I going to talk about that? We ended up with a conversation. It's very valid, very valid. First thing, it's just the separation of some of the log files that are relevant for a particular place in time, moment in time. For example, all of your bring up stuff that you use Cloud Builder for is all logged on the Cloud Builder appliance itself. So that narrows things down tremendously. So you can have a lot of log files to work with, obviously. Now I'm going to jump on down to this guy. There's a whole list. The presentation will be available. You can read the whole list on your own. I'm not just going to make you read log files. I'm going to make you read our presentation, too. But that VRSLCM. Anybody recognize the acronym? Visualize Lifecycle Manager. Okay? The operations that take place are actually on that appliance. The installation is on the SDC Manager. So that's one I just want to point out. Now, since we talk LCM, Ryan's going to give us a more of a deep dive, but since we talk LCM, there's another LCM. If you aren't aware, there's, it's not a full handful, but there's multiple lifecycle managers that we have available to us. And we bring them into SDC Manager, they call the other ones. So they're able to database that stuff and make it happen. So vCenter's Lifecycle Manager would be identified through this LCM because his calls are going to go out to vCenter. Okay? Then there's our favorite. Have I mentioned certificate management yet? Did I already query you on the joy you had in managing your certificates? Oh, I mentioned password expiration. How about certificate expiration? Isn't that a fun one? You can say no. It's okay, Klaus. You can say no. It's not fun. But we'll keep track of the timeout. We'll keep track of what's going on with certificates in that log. And the SOS logs for all the stuff that we talked about here. Okay. First aid. This is more second aid. Okay? We talk first aid. You're going to look at your logs. You're going to look at SOS. You're going to find out the failed components. You're going to make sure you get it fixed. But sometimes you have to recover from a catastrophic failure. Don't you hate being in Barcelona and have somebody talk about catastrophic failure? I do. That's not fun. But in a catastrophic failure, I don't know how many of you have had to recover vCenter, NSX, ARIA from a catastrophic failure. If you did, you would know for sure that vCenter server has a database, NSX Manager has a database, ARIA Suite has a database, and recovering the appliance is a piece of cake. Guess who else has a database? SDDC Manager. Well, you didn't have to guess. I told you that earlier. So the recovery of those appliances is no different than the recovery of your SDC Manager in that you need versioning information, very important. You pull up the appliance, it's got to be the same version as the one that deployed the database, that contained the database. So then you recover and you use the same recovery. So I got all these steps, but it's the same steps that we've talked about for catastrophic recovery on any other of our database type appliances. Deploy hosts, clean hosts, Cloud Builder, you do a partial bring up, because Cloud Builder can take care of bringing up the rest of the appliances that you need with your guidance, and then get those all done, you restore the appliance. What's restoring the appliance actually mean? It's restoring the database. It's getting your last known good database up and running. Okay? So NSX may or may not be a separate issue for you. The NSX has its own database, so you're going to do the same thing and then pull on your edge nodes. Let me get out of your way. Sorry, Brian identified the fact that our people are so smart that come to these sessions that they don't need to see a slide. They need a QR code to get to the actual documentation. That's what that QR code is for. So when you get the deck and you're going, yeah, that sure seems easy. I did make this 6 steps, but I gotta tell you, the documentation is slightly more than 6 steps. Slightly. Like maybe 20 or so steps. But some of them you can skip because they're not important. That's why you're only seeing the important ones here. Next, another QR code for Lifecycle Manager. Are you going to talk about this one?
Sure.
Did I keep going too long?
Nope.
I love it when Brian talks, because when the brain speaks, people listen.
Off the stage, off the stage. All right, thank you, Tim. So, you'll remember at the beginning of the session I said I'm just about to hit year 20 at VMware. I would like to make it to that big anniversary, so I'm going to do a delicate balancing act here and talk about lifecycle management, but do so in a way that, again, hopefully preserves my ongoing career. Lifecycle management in VCF is perhaps a little more complicated today than perhaps it ought to be. There have been a lot of from my perspective, and I look at things, both the good and the bad. I think there's definitely some positive things about VCF and the way it's taken all these different technologies and brought them together, nowadays all under a single license. So in some ways, our life is getting easier than it was before. Licensing is easier. You just get VCF. But lifecycle management is a bit of a challenge today because, as Tim hinted at, in the VCF world, there are actually 3 separate lifecycle management capabilities that you need to know about. 2 in particular. All the way. There we go. So in VCF proper, in SDDC Manager, SDDC Manager has lifecycle management capabilities built in to update and patch the appropriate components. In turn, it also talks to the vSphere lifecycle management capability. Between the combination of those 2, they will take care of upgrading and patching your vCenter servers, your ESXi servers, your vSAN, and your NSX. But that's not the end of the story. At this point, VCF 5.2, you have various ARIA components that you now have access to that perhaps you didn't before. In the world of the ARIA suite, its products and its technologies, we have for quite a while now had a tool specifically to manage the lifecycle of various ARIA suite products, such as ARIA Automation, ARIA Operations for logs, ARIA Operations for networks, or perhaps you know them by older names, whether you want to call them vRealize Automation or VCAC or whatever you want to call them. One of the key things that ARIA Suite Lifecycle does is it takes care of enabling you to install all those products using the same methodology. That's a big win. It also takes care of setting up passwords and certificates for those different products. It helps you to update them. It helps you to patch them. But at this point, I'm not at liberty to share anything beyond this, but at this point, the ARIA Suite lifecycle technology is still used to separately manage the lifecycle of the ARIA Suite components. So again, you've got the vSphere lifecycle management capabilities and the SDDC Manager lifecycle capabilities. And alongside of those, to take care of the ARIA components, you have the ARIA Suite lifecycle. Again, things could change in the future. We know that the situation in terms of lifecycle management is a bit more complex today than it could be. So look to the future to see perhaps some simplification.
Was there some lines you were kind of talking between there? Just a little between the lines.
So, in order to get started down this path, and by the way, Tim finally stepped aside from the QR code. That is a very important document if you are going to be dealing with lifecycle management. So again, you're going to download the VCF upgrade bundle that contains the BOM of all the stuff that you need. You will install ARIA Suite Lifecycle so that it can manage those ARIA components. It will take care of downloading the patches that you need. It will take care of actually installing the patches. But you do need, at this point in time, you do need to be aware of each of these. If you learn nothing else from this slide, you need to know the SDDC Manager Lifecycle component and the ARIA Suite Lifecycle Management component.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. We actually have a healthy amount of time left over for any questions that you may have, or if you want photographs with V. Gandalf.
Oh,
he is here. I should have said at the beginning, we're lucky to have Tim on stage. He spoke just briefly before here and could barely get him away from the crowd, so please feel free. If you have questions, we have a microphone, is that correct? I know that I myself will not hear without a microphone in your hand, so if there are questions, when there are questions, we've got a microphone over here.
Why do we want to do this? Why do we want to do a first aid for Lifecycle Manager? I'm gonna move this slide ahead for a minute.
Good one.
Because we want, I mean, nobody does. Okay, I got another question for you. Who loves to call global support with a problem? Come on, you're lying to me. Well, Constantine is not lying to me. He does love to call global support. We don't generally want something happen bad enough that we have to. Am I right? I'd rather, if I could fix it myself in a shorter period of time. I don't know, those of you that have called global support, how fast the response has been. Pretty good? He said it's okay? I love it when Constantine talks to us.
The idea is you know how you can fix it because you can read the logs and you can understand how you can work on that problem. But you need to be sure that someone from VMware can help you and identify that, yes, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
That's why you have to call them.
It's a good idea to get their okay or their blessing. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the idea.
Yep.
Just a positive thinking of what you want to do is okay by them also.
Right. It's a support situation. It's been supported.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we all want to take first steps. And what we wanted to do in this session is to provide a little bit of guidance for self-sufficiency so you could get that first step accomplished. you could get, okay, SOS is telling me all this. I got color-coded. I've got too many reds here. I need to make sure that I get this fixed. Global support, help me. Okay, I'm on hold. Let me grab the logs while I'm waiting. Let me make sure the VI domain has got that information on it. So that's the purpose of being as self-sufficient as you can be. Of course, the more you work with it, the more you'll call constantly and say, hey, I think I got this figured out. And he'll go, it's good. Right. So getting support is good. Getting prepared for support is what we think of as self-sufficiency. Okay. Time left. Bar's still open. So are we.
Again, tomorrow we have a session, 2:30 here, where we're going to talk about how to simplify the operations. So we indeed have discussed some of your journey here, but in order to be able to operate your environment efficiently, we're going to be taking a look at technologies tomorrow to help you get along that path. If you're manually deploying machines still, that's slowing you down. If you're manually deploying machines, that's introducing inconsistencies and errors.
Don't take all the thunder away.
Okay, we'll save it tomorrow.
Okay, can I ask a question? Yeah.
Yes.
So, I look after about 8 VCF instances, most of which are completely offline, which makes logs and stuff a bit more complicated. We spend more time redacting logs than we do actually gathering the logs. So all the tools that are in place for gathering the logs are almost no use to us, because we've then got to extract everything, all the tar bundles and everything, to redact everything, to upload them. Is there any plans somewhere in the future to actually implement that kind of functionality within the tools? Because it would make such a difference to us, because as I said, we spend so much time doing it. The last time we had to do a full log bundle for VCF, it took 6 days to redact for the information the GSS asked us for, the tool they provided.
It probably took half of that time just to gather the logs in the log bundle.
It was about 8 hours to gather the bundle, but yeah, it took 6 days. As it was, GSS carried on working on the problem, and they fixed it before
we got
the logs. But they still wanted to see the logs to do like a, to look at it later. But it took 6 days for a log bundle to redact it all using tools. Since then, we've written our own, which redact it. It'll do it in about a day, but it would be much nicer if that kind of functionality was built into the tool. Again, just click on a switch, dash redact.
Right, or / filter what logs you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we tend to do. We tend to have to say to support, look, we can't give you a log bundle. Just tell us what logs you think you need, and we'll just drip feed you. And if the log you've got doesn't show what you need, give us the next log, and we'll show you the next log, and we'll show you the next log. But our customers are they just do not like the idea of us sending gigabytes of logs often off to support.
If I can replay a bit of the conversation from Tim earlier, logs are a challenge, and one of the biggest problems with logs is they're spread all over the place, and just tracking them down can be very time consuming. So one of the things that we will be talking about tomorrow is a technology. You may know it as Serialized Network Insight, or Verni, or
Serialized Log Insight.
Excuse me, what did I say? Network Insight?
Yeah.
Log Insight. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So we'll be talking about that and how it can aggregate your logs together to more quickly get to them. That is not the end-all be-all solution for every customer situation, but I think that is a minimum step if you want to be able to, or use technologies like it in order to have that ready access to the information when you need it.
And filtering capability is built in to Log Insight. If you've not used Log Insight, do come tomorrow. You won't want to miss Brian talking. Oh, I'm talking about Log Insight. You won't want to miss my incredible presentation on Log Insight. Good?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? I know the one thing on most of your mind is how long is the bar open? 57 minutes. But we're here until then if you need us. Thank you all very much for your kind participation today.